now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. My next guest is the president of the Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights. Tonight he's here to unpack the latest data from the Bishops' Conference just released 2016 annual report on clergy sex abuse. What do the numbers tell us? And it'll bring us up to date on the latest media controversy surrounding Kathy Griffin and Bill Maher and so many more. How much lower can the culture go? Here to tell us, we're joined via satellite from Manhattan by Dr. Bill Donohue. Bill, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with this Bishops' Conference report on clergy sex abuse. These are annual reports. What do the latest show us? What do these numbers tell us? They claim there are only two charges here, two substantiated cases among the 52,000 plus priests and deacons in the country.
Right. The way they do it is they look back at all allegations made in the past year, in this case, in the middle of 14 to the middle of 15, and that's of some interest. But I'm interested mostly in what's happened during that 1 year. In other words, do we have this problem today, or have we made any progress? They found out that if you put the priests and the deacons together, you have over 52,000 members of the clergy. There were 25 allegations made, only 2 of which were substantiated. So if you take a look at the 2, divided by the 52,238, you wind up with 0.004% of the clergy had a substantiated charge against them during that year.
And Bill, what do the victims tell us? I mean, they break down the sex of the victims by percentages. What do those numbers tell you?
Oh, it's as always, 8 out of every 10 of the victims are male, and we know that 100% of the victimizers are male, and we know that the vast majority of them are post-pubescent, which means that, again, it's the homosexual priests who have accounted for almost all, 80% of all the sexual abuse cases in the Catholic Church are accounted for by homosexuals, less than 5%, less than 5, pedophilia. All right, so we never had a pedophilia scandal in the Catholic Church. It's all a lie. I guess I'll go to my grave as the only guy who will tell the truth on it. I didn't make up the data. I just read.
And you're a sociologist, we should point out. Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida, you recently tangled with them. This was the case of a student, Marshall Polston, and he argued with a Muslim professor. They were debating the licitness of the crucifixion, whether it historically took place, and the disciples who followed Jesus afterward. He was suspended from class after a series of events. You went to bat for him. Why, and what happened?
Well, I have a nose for this. I've been doing this job now for 24 years, and I figured out this guy is definitely clean from everything I could learn about it, and I spoke to him personally about this, and then I called the president. That was an interesting phone call.
Oh.
He couldn't answer anything for me. Basically, it was this female Muslim professor who exercised her intolerance by trying to shut down the freedom of speech of a Christian who, by the way, I didn't think you were allowed to teach Christianity in the classroom. Why was she allowed to teach Islam in the classroom? That's a separate issue. But then the student registers some concerns and raises questions. Next thing you know, he's suspended. We got her in lies. The president was an embarrassment. He couldn't answer the questions that I had for him. I'm very proud of what we did, and we won for this kid.
Yeah, he was reinstated. The boy continued his academic career, which is
right, exactly.
Which was stalled for the moment. I want to talk about a recent court ruling. This in Chicago. Now, this is the case of a man named Colin Collette. He was a church employee. He was suspended. He was fired by the Diocese of Chicago. And the reason he was fired is because he announced that he was, I guess, announced his engagement to his boyfriend. Now, he took the Archdiocese to court. Your take on this, what we're seeing and what the court said?
Well, this is going on all over the country. Gays are setting up these controversies, deliberately suing Catholic hospitals for their transformations. They don't like the fact that they were born a man, so they want to become a girl. Here we have a case here. This guy claims to be married. Obviously, 2 men can't get married. I don't care what the civil law says. Common sense would tell you a man cannot marry a man because they can't have children, which is the functional purpose of marriage in the first place. So he knows what the house rules are of the Catholic Church. He sues anyway. And, of course, he loses. I'm glad he lost. I mean, mean, thank God, we still have a First Amendment which insulates the Catholic Church from the heavy hand of the government. But, you know, this is rather startling. You have people coming out now saying, you know, we have Pope Francis over there, and he reaches out to gays, and he wouldn't want this. Well, Pope Francis has said, when he was the Archbishop in Argentina, Buenos Aires, he said that gay marriage was demonic. And when he was at the White House in 2015, he talked about the decisions that were being reached in this country about gay marriage, and he said that we are entitled to treat gays respectfully, but we should not participate in any unjust discrimination, meaning that there's such a thing as just discrimination. Sexual orientation does not give you a right, therefore, to change church doctrine on anything. And I think there's been a misreading of Pope Francis on this issue.
Now, Bill, people might hear that and they say, wait a minute, you're saying that you can justly discriminate against people? I thought the church was for everyone and supportive of everybody. Doesn't that violate Christ's mission and that of the church?
No, we're just like civil society. I took the subway this week in New York City, and I read a sign which said that women and minorities who run small businesses or want to start up a small business, they can apply for all kinds of assistance. In other words, if you're a white man, you don't qualify. That's considered just discrimination. We have laws in this country which say that veterans only can get veterans' rights. We have laws in this country regarding minors. They can't have alcohol. There's all kinds of examples in society where we make distinctions. If you're a short guy, you can't get on the roller coaster, okay? And have a little bar there, you know. If you're a little short guy like some of these people in Hollywood, the writers, you can't get on the roller coaster. You get on the whirlwind or something like that. So that's the way it is. And the Catholic Church is saying that all homosexuals are equal in the eyes of God, and we should accept them. But when you get to the law and you get into sexual orientation used as a lever to try and change an institution, and now you're going to argue that gay marriage is something that we have to accept. No, we can always say gays are welcome in the church, but we don't have to accept the idea, which I think is bizarre, and most people would agree with me, at least for millennia, all of history, that you can't get married unless you're a man and a woman.
Bill, I want to talk about the comedians we've been seeing in recent days, no doubt empowered by the ratings bump some of them have seen, Stephen Colbert and others. They seem to be pushing the envelope pretty hard. You've got Kathy Griffin with her severed head, the mocked head of Donald Trump. You had Bill Maher using the N-word. What is the standard? What are there words or acts you cannot do and keep your job? Or is this an ever-changing rule depending on who the target is?
It depends on who the target is. Political correctness is set in big time. You can't use the N-word or Bill Maher, but we accounted for over 60 examples where he has spoken about priests and popes in the most filthy language possible. Nobody's upset with that. The same
Has he ever apologized,
with these other people? No, not to Catholics. He has apologized. Bill Maher is on record for apologizing. But see, when it comes to Catholics, it's open season. They don't regard that as being untoward. Blacks are special. Gays are the most special. And Muslims, you got to be very careful what you say about the Muslims because they don't like that. Catholics, nobody cares about it. In other words, they're all a bunch of phonies. But I'm glad at least that there's some outrage. We know that Kathy Griffin simulated oral sex on Anderson Cooper on New Year's Eve a few years ago. That's perfectly fine. I don't know why that should be fine. But now all of a sudden, the dreaded N-word. Finally, there's some outrage out there. And, so Maher's kind of in trouble for that. It just goes to show you the duplicity. If they were consistent, if they were principled, it wouldn't make any difference who the demographic group is, but it does.
Bill, let's talk about this show, The Real O'Neills. Now, you targeted this show. This is an ABC sitcom. It only ran for, I think, one season. You early on said this would not, 2 years. You said early on this thing is not going to last. Why did you think that, and what brought about its ultimate demise?
Well, I was angry, not so much even about the content, but on the basis of the show. The origin of the show was based on one of the co-producers, Dan Savage, who has never found a deviant, filthy sex act that he couldn't justify, and he hates the Catholic Church. Now, if you took somebody, like a David Duke, you wouldn't make a show about black people based on David Duke. Why is it that ABC took Dan Savage, this man who hates the Catholic Church? His obscenities are so vile that the New York Times would not allow me even to use asterisks in place of letters to describe what he has said about Catholics and about priests and about the Pope. So my concern was more that than the content. Now, the content of the show, you know, typical gay thing, Catholic family, Irish Catholic, of course, all the stereotypes are there were just plain stupid. It probably died more under its own weight. But I'll tell you one thing, ABC is bold. These little Snow White people, it's owned by Disney, they would have dropped the show after the first season, except they didn't want to look like they were giving in to Bill Donohuee, because when Kathy Griffin was back in the news, they've now admitted, they didn't admit it in 2007, that when they never showed her on the Emmys making some filthy comment about Jesus, they did it because it was released early, and I got wind of it. I registered a protest, and they said because of Donohuee and the Catholic League, we would not show it. So they don't want to have the appearance of giving in to the Catholic League, but ultimately it did die. It should never have seen the light of day in the first place.
Bill, we saw the visit of Donald Trump, President Trump, with Pope Francis a few weeks ago, and there was a lot of commentary about the look on the Pope's face, which now we see he met with Justin Trudeau subsequently. They practically have the same appearance. The Pope has the same reaction to both of them, and they couldn't be more removed politically. Your take on this and the way it was covered?
Yeah, it's amazing. Look, when I met the Pope, he is very cordial and friendly, and when you meet with him and shake his hands, he has a big smile. But in still pictures, in a group picture, he doesn't smile. That's just the way the man is, all right? You know, I'm not reading anything into it. He did the same thing. I have a picture which we put up on our website of John Kerry, the Secretary of State, and President Obama. Both of them have a big smile, and he's not smiling. Now, am I supposed to read into that like Houdini about trying to figure out what that is? Bring in the shrinks to try to interpret this? This is crazy talk. And now they've got the picture with Trudeau and the Pope. It means nothing unless your goal, of course, is to try and make Trump look bad and make the Pope look good. And they like the Pope because he's left on some issues that they like. That's what it comes out to.
Now, Justin
it's the media
Trudeau,
bias one more time.
Justin Trudeau, who we mentioned a minute ago, asked or is asking the Pope to apologize to the Aboriginal people in Canada because they were taken into the residential schools there, we're going back to the 19th century, and, you know, their native beliefs, their native practices were sort of drilled out of them. He thinks the Pope should apologize. You have, in turn, asked Justin Trudeau for an apology. Tell us what it is and why.
No, I wrote to Justin Trudeau after I did a little research on Canada's history, and I found out the way they treat blacks and the way they've treated Asians and their own indigenous people and others, and certainly including Catholics. And I went right down the list, and I said, my God, you've got to apologize to this group, this group, this group, this group, and you got to do it right away. And we can't have a stopwatch on this, but you got to do it very quickly. And, you know, I mean, the idea that somebody comes to the table, historically speaking, with his hands clean, he's Mr. Clean. Trudeau, this little guy, about 45 years of age, he's going to lecture a man who's almost twice his age and tell him that you've got problems in your institution that he doesn't have in his own country and that we have to apologize to him? I mean, the Pope is kinder, certainly, than I would be. And I wrote a real snarky letter to him, letting him know I know something about Canadian history and some of the things that you've done to people. And by the way, they're persecuting Catholic priests today in Canada and Protestant ministers. If you don't go along with their idea of two men getting married, they will come after you. And I've given some examples to Trudeau. I don't expect to ever hear from him. I hope he got the message.
Bill Donohue, before I let you go, give us a preview of what you're looking at now. There's a new series, a Netflix series called F for Family. What is this about? Are you going to be targeting them?
Yes, I am. It's so filthy I can't describe on the air what they're saying about Jesus and our Blessed Mother. And the filthy portrayals. It's animated. It's a cartoon. So appropriate for kids. It's so vile, it's unbelievable. I've tried a different tactic because I've written to these Hollywood guys before, and they just kind of blow you off for the most part. Now I found out that this guy, Reed Hastings, he's the president, and he's worth $2 billion. He runs Netflix. His wife is Patricia Ann. So I wrote him a letter. It's going to be released very shortly, saying, listen, has Patty Ann seen this? Has Patty Ann seen this episode where, and I'm not going to describe it on the air, what's been going on. And I asked several questions about Patty Ann. And at the end, I said, look, excuse me for being personable, but you Hollywood guys have a way of just blowing us off every time we're polite and we simply register a complaint. It's gotten to the point where it's rather incredible. I don't want to hear one more person tell me about the dreaded N-word. Why should I get upset about what bothers you when all you do is push my hot buttons all day long and no one ever extends an apology? These people are rank phonies.
Bill Donohue, thanks for being here. You can follow Bill Donohue and his work at the Catholic League at catholicleague.org.